Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And as always, I'm going to start off the show by saying like and subscribe and comment on this video. When you guys do that, it ups our viewership, and that is awesome. And we appreciate you guys for doing that. I also have a great time looking through the comments and reading some of the funny things you guys have to say, some of the nice things you guys have to say. When you guys say mean stuff, I just ignore it. So if you want to comment that, go ahead. But anyways, that's what we want you guys to do so we can continue to keep doing these every single week. All right, we're going to jump into questions, Mike. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Yay, I'm glad. Okay, we're going to start off by talking about Taylen Green. Parallax Pig wants to know, do you think Petrino will start evolving to a Matt Jones style offense to get Green on the edge and run play action off that? SEC defenses are just going to get tougher.
No, I don't think Bobby Petrino is going to modify the offense very much. He might emphasize certain things in certain games, like if they were going against a team that, you know, basically was really good with a pass defense, but maybe their run defense was suspect, you might see them run more. I don't see him modifying the offense. He went after Taylen Green for a reason. He knew he was athletic. He felt like he could work with him and develop him as a passer, and he went and sold that to him. Green knew what he was getting into. When he heard that, he went, yes, this is what I'm looking for. I want to get better. I want to go to the NFL. I got to develop myself as a passer. And that's a work in progress. I keep saying that. This could go on all year. It might go into next year. It depends on how badly Green feels like he wants to do this. And if he comes back, if he believes if he comes back another year, he can complete the process. So I don't think he himself wants to turn more into a running quarterback. Some fans may want it.
I think they do.
And there's a little bit of, you know, that last drive was pretty much all on the ground. And I would just say that Green got bailed out because he threw what, you know, could have been a fourth down incompletion, and they would have had to punt. And then he got bailed out on a roughing the passer or some penalty there. So it kept the drive going, and at that point they just stayed on the ground. That was intentional, but I don't see them doing that a lot. That was a game of, it was a physical game. It was each team trying to hit the other one in the mouth, and I think they sensed they had worn Auburn down. So let's just burn the clock out, which they almost did, and run the ball. But if you look, Taylen didn't run a lot on that drive. It was mostly just handoffs to the running back. So I just don't see him even wanting to do that, much less them saying, yeah, we're going to give up. You can't throw it. We realize it. You're terrible. So we're just going to have you run it.
Yeah, I don't think they're just going to give up like that. It doesn't seem like that's what the idea is.
We've just got too many fans that think this guy can't throw. And he can. He's just inconsistent.
Right, and that's something that Petrino knows and Taylen Green knows. I think Pittman even says if you ask Taylen Green, he'll say that he's not perfect and he wants to get better each and every week. And I think that that's what you see with a guy like this is he knows he wants to make it to the NFL. He thinks Bobby Petrino can get him there, and he's going to have to develop there much more if he wants to do that. So I think you're exactly right. We're going to talk a little bit more about Green in just a second because fans, you know, they have some opinions on that. Eddie Lynn wants to know, do we have some of the dumbest fans in football or what? They're still pushing that bench the quarterback garbage. Well, he got benched and we went 3 and out. He came back in and threw the longest touchdown pass of the season. And to be fair, Eddie Lynn, he didn't get benched. Pittman said he had cramps. Whether you believe that or not, I know some fans out there don't. I'm a little bit suspect of it myself, but.
Well, the important thing is, at that point, Auburn came back and tied the game for the first time since they were down. So it's now a 7-7 ball game. And what did he do? He came off the bench and went out there and promptly threw the longest touchdown pass of his career. And he did it on an improvised play. I just keep saying this, that every time you say he can't do this, he panics, whatever you want to accuse him of, he comes right back and does something to make up for it. And how long are we going to hear this stuff? Well, you can't do that against this team. Supposedly, we wouldn't be able to do this against Auburn. Might be able to do it again. Well, he did it against Oklahoma State, which is a good team. So just to say, he did it against UAB, but he can't do it against Auburn. Well, he did do it against Auburn. I think he'll do it against anybody, some. I don't know that he wants to do it a lot.
Yeah.
But that's the whole issue is How long is it going to take him to develop, to be more consistent? And how patient is Petrino going to be? I don't think Petrino has a choice. When you start talking about putting Malachi Singleton in there, it's not even fair. He's not prepared for that. They didn't prepare him in the preseason to be the starter. The only significant action he's seen, he played a little bit in last year toward the end of the year, and he was in that UAPB game, and he played pretty well. But you saw what happened when you stuck him in a pressure situation against Auburn. It's not fair.
Well, you saw him use his feet as well. And I looked at it and I turned to DJ and I literally said, you put Taylen Green on that play and he gets that first down. He gets that because he's quick and he can use his feet. So I think, yes, Malachi Singleton, we're not taking anything away from him, guys. He is a very talented quarterback as well. But I think you have to go with Green. That's why I think we're going to talk a little bit about the decision to quote unquote bench him. Obviously, Pittman said, we know what he said in the press conference, that he had cramps. I just don't know if I fully buy that. And
we'll never know. But the point is, what if they did? Then what does that tell you? It tells whoever made that decision. I think I lost my mic here. Let me pull it out. It fell down.
Oh no, oh no.
Oh, it's got to go deep inside. Okay, I'll get it here. Anyway, whoever made that decision probably felt like, hey, he needs to sit and watch. How many times have we seen that? I've seen it happen in a baseball game.
Sure. And I feel like Bobby Petrino, and again, we're going to get into some of this, but I think Bobby might have said, come on out. Come on out, see what it feels like to be benched.
Yeah.
That's a motivation
You saw him
tactic.
standing there looking.
I did.
He had that look on his eye like, oh, I don't want to get back in there.
I noticed it, and I said, I think this might fuel him.
I
I initially didn't like the decision. Whether you believe it or not, it was cramps. I said, you know what? I don't like this. I didn't know what it was for at the time. But then I saw the motivation technique, and I said, all right, they know what they're doing out there. Marty Bird's Proxy says, I have no problem with Bobby and Sam putting in Singleton for a series. If he moved the chains, I wouldn't mind it occasionally as a change of pace. In this case, it seemed to settle Green maybe.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that. I think if you have to put a Singleton in, you have to do what you have to do. But just to say, you know what, Green's not doing real well, let's just put Singleton in. To me, you waste a series. Yeah. And I don't think you can afford to do that. I think they may have, we don't know why they did it, but I don't think they'll do it again.
I don't think they will either. I also say, I stand by what I said just before, that Taylen Green would have gotten that first down on his feet when Malachi Singleton did not. So I stand by that, and I think that's what you get with having Taylen Green in the game. Whether you like it or not, I mean, we're not the coaches, right? I don't think you just take him out to prove a point or say, hey, you know, sit on the bench for this one.
I think if we see Singleton again, it'll be because he has to come in.
Absolutely. The Hawk Hawkins wants to know, does Bobby have a blind spot when it comes to some of our receivers? Satania needs more touches. I've heard you say that Harrison needs to get on the field. I agree. Replace Broden with the older-than-dirt freshman. Whoa, hold on, the Hawk Hawkins. Put some respect on Monty Harrison's name. Come on, put some respect on it.
Here's my take on that. I think Taylen Green has a hard time going through his progressions. And I don't think he sees the field real well. Right? I think that's one of his problems. And I think one of the reasons he keeps throwing to Armstrong, one is because he catches the ball, but number two, he's a big, tall target. And that's why I think Broden is still in there.
Because he's tall.
Because he's 6'7". At some point, they got to make a decision. I didn't look his stats up, but they got to be like, what? Like how caught 2 passes out of 20 touches or 20 targets? I don't know. He's not catching anything. So at some point, but his backup, they got 3 guys back there. One of them, the guy that's fourth, is 6'4", so that might help. But you get into this whole thing with Satania. I think he's hard to see sometimes. For Taylen Green, he's not tall. He's he's 6 foot, 5'11", or whatever he is, and I just think maybe that's what's going on there. That you've got a quarterback that likes to throw to big, tall targets. And if you notice, what does he do? He throws high all the time.
He does.
I think he's very mindful of interceptions. Doesn't want them, so he throws the ball to a 6'6", 6'7" guy and throws it high, figuring no one can pick the ball off.
Mousetown asks, you're going to get mad at me again, but how good is Auburn? Not very, I say, and they made more mistakes than we did against Oklahoma State, and we struggled to beat them. I don't really hate him for this comment because It is a fair question, Mike.
It's fair but you got to understand what you're talking about. Do you want to talk about Auburn as an SEC team? They may end up dead last. I'm not kidding. Their schedule is pretty tough, and I'm not sure there's a team left on theirs. When they did away with divisions, they didn't do Auburn any favors this year. The most likely team they could beat from here on out is Vanderbilt, and I don't know that they'll win that game. Vanderbilt's good. You got to play to beat them. I mean, Mizzou came within a hair of losing that game at home to them. So it's entirely possible that Auburn might not win an SEC game. You see? Now, if that happens, Hugh Freeze is really in trouble. So you'd say they're bad. Well, here's what I say to that. Two things. First of all, if you put them in another conference like the Big 12 or the ACC, they might be middle of the pack. They wouldn't be dead last. Secondly, in this game, Hugh Freeze knew this is our one chance to get off to a good start. We are going to be in trouble after that. But if I can get them to win this game, maybe I can get them to play fired up and we can overcome some odds and win a game or two. I think he went all out. You could see it. I saw the Cal loss, Auburn's Cal loss in replay, and saw how they played in that game. That's not even the same team that played Arkansas. Look at what happened. Come out at the start of the game. Look at the way they laid Armstrong out. And guess what happened? He got back up and came back in the game. That's where you have to give Arkansas a lot of credit. This was a slobber-knocking, hit in your face, knock you down kind of game. And Arkansas matched them, and in the end, in the fourth quarter, wore them out and wore them down. Wow. So I give them a lot of credit. This was not an easy win because of how hard the other team was playing. Yeah. If they'd been out there messing around, that'd be one thing. But Arkansas went into an opposing arena that was full of fans. It was very noisy. It was good, hard for the Taylen Green to hear what was going on. Very difficult circumstances, especially at the start of the game, and they just they dealt with it. Yeah. And you can't minimize that. J.J. Metters, who caught a touchdown pass for Arkansas's first ever win over Alabama in the SEC back in the Barry Lunny days, he got on Facebook or Twitter, one of the others, and said, our fans don't understand how hard it is to win an SEC game. This is an accomplishment, and I agree with that. Here's what they did in this game. Let's talk about all the complaints against them. Maybe it's not technically a one-possession game, but it pretty much was a game that could go either way at the end. Yes, it could. And they won it. So you can't say, oh, he loses games like that. All right, let's see the other complaint. Oh, you start off hot and then you go downhill in the second half. No, they didn't. Played their best football in the third and fourth quarter. So you can't claim that. So they overcame some complaints against this football team. And we're going to get into this whole business of playing better on the road in a minute, but I just think there are some things about this team, and I've said it last week, where they get saddled with stuff that happened last year. Yeah. And everybody's just assuming it's the same thing. And in this game, they proved they're not last year's team. We said it last week. We thought they would have lost against UAB. I think they would have lost this game. Well, they did lose this game last year, and they lost it at home against essentially the same team. So I thought it was a big win.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I had never been to Auburn before. That was my first time, and I walked into that stadium, and I turned to Alyssa, and I said, wow, this is an atmosphere. And for an afternoon kick, where, by the way, guys, it was extremely hot. I mean, it was extremely hot, like dangerously hot. I had a friend of mine in the stands who actually passed out from heat stroke.
Razorback fans, a lot of them, if a game that hot, they just wouldn't go.
They wouldn't go. And there are other teams in the SEC that are the same way as that. There were people complaining on social media about, oh, this is why you don't schedule a game at 2:30 in the SEC. This is why you don't. No, look at Auburn. So I said immediately, I was like, man, just the crowd noise, and this atmosphere would be enough to rattle, like you said, last year's team, I feel like.
They've got great fans. They do. I mean, a lot of people don't like Auburn because of some of the things that happened over the years, but we've always had good experiences there with their fans. They're committed, but they're not jerks.
No, they were really nice.
And I'm telling you, they're a lot more loyal than most fan bases are.
They are, and so I was worried when I saw that crowd. But man, I mean, this team, they did rally. They did get through it.
That's what you have to take into consideration when you say Auburn's not very good. They're not, but they were on this day.
I agree with you there. I think they played poorly. I won't give them too much credit, but I do think
their quarterbacks played poorly, but the rest of the team didn't.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. And that was credit to how Arkansas played as well. That was credit to some of the things that Arkansas was doing. I mean, you go in there with a defensive game plan of we're going to make the quarterback beat us. Well, the quarterbacks played poorly and they didn't beat you. So
I mean, look at the fact that everybody was talking about that Oklahoma State. Well, you should have won the game, but you just gave it away. Now, what do you think? Now the other team did that. The other team's the one that had all the turnovers. See how they turn things around, but they don't get any credit for that with some fans, because I've read a lot of this stuff. Mousetown, a lot of people were saying that. You didn't beat anybody. You just didn't. Don't get too excited about this. The team you beat's no good. Well, it's not. No, on that day they were good. They won't stay that way. They won't play that way this week, I promise you, and probably not for the rest of the year. But on that day, opening SEC game, hey, we got to win this game. That game was every bit as important to Hugh Freeze as it was to Sam Pittman. I think it could have decided whether either one of them gets fired. And we may see Freeze gone, and we may see Pittman here.
Well, we're going to talk about Freeze in a second because I think we have another question about him. But KY Hogg asks, are the tight ends hurt? We're not throwing the ball to them. If they're not hurt, is Petrino or Green? Is it Petrino or Green that doesn't want to throw the ball to them?
According to Pittman, it's neither one. And you always get a different answer when you actually go to the coach. He said what's happening to specifically Luke Hasz is that on the plays where he's been targeted, the pass blocking has been bad. And he said Green's gotten jittery and have to get rid of the ball too quickly, and so he looks him off and throws to somebody else. We've heard that he's not real happy, that Hasz is not real happy and wants this to change. I think they've got to figure it out. He's too important to them.
I would say they have to figure it out because otherwise, like you said, this is a guy who could transfer other places and be utilized a lot.
Exactly.
And so I think they have to get that figured out if they want him to stick around Arkansas and stay for another year.
But
that's
the word
for sure.
from Sam Pittman is the blocking's not good so far on the plays in which he's targeted.
Hog Redneck says, with about 2 minutes left in the game, Auburn went for it and didn't make it. We're up by 10 points, and it looked like Sam told Bobby to sit on the ball. He didn't look happy about that. Neither was I. Got to go for the jugular.
Well, I saw what he's talking about. Now, I'm not a lip reader, so I didn't know what was said. But I will say this. You can really easily misread Bobby Petrino's body language. He just looked like, to me, he always looks. He just has that sour. You know, remember the dude's mad comment? A lot of people think I'm mad when I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't think he was mad. I don't think he was mad about what was said. He probably agreed with him. And I do think Sam probably said, we got to be real careful here. Keep in mind what had just happened. Auburn had gone for it on 4th down. So Arkansas is in the red zone. I think they were in the red zone or close to it. And there's about 3 minutes left or two minutes and something.
2 minutes and something.
So clearly you want to burn that clock down as much as possible, but you got a decision to make. Like he says, I'd go for it. I'd try to score. I thought that a little bit when I first thought about it, but then I said to myself, okay, you definitely don't want to throw the ball because if you got an incompletion, all you're doing is stopping the clock. So you don't want to do that. So what if you try to get creative in the run game? What if you fumble? So then the answer is what they did was they just handed it off, go to the ground, cover up the ball. Well, that only takes about 3 seconds. So they weren't burning much time off the clock. Auburn had 2 timeouts. So the way that, and you saw that like the wheels turning in Pittman's head, he was trying to figure out how much, if they went for it on 4th down as opposed to kicking the field goal, how much time would be left. And I think it ended up a little under a minute. So they got a little under a minute to go about 80 yards or whatever, score, get an onside kick, and figure out a way to either kick a field goal or score again. The only other thing, in my opinion, that they could have done is you could have turned and given the ball to whichever running back was in, have them turn and do a slow run to the sidelines, pull your offensive line along with them and try to shield them as much as possible from defenders trying to go in there and take them down. And maybe you could burn about 5-6 seconds off of the clock that way instead of 2 where you go straight down. And if you do that 3 times, maybe you've eaten up another 30 seconds off the clock, so you could have gotten it down to 30 seconds instead of a minute. Maybe that would be a better strategy. But it worked out. I mean, they didn't really ever come close to doing anything there.
Yeah.
Arkansas's defense held up.
Exactly, and I get the point of got to go for the jugular, but there's so many things that can go wrong if you go for the jugular in those type of games. So I think playing a bit conservatively there and actually helped them out.
Yeah, I think so. Again, that's the only other thing. I would not have thrown the ball, and I think it'd be really dangerous to try and get creative in the running game, and then you end up with a fumble.
So many things can go wrong, so I think playing conservatively actually helps you out. So I would agree with Sam Pittman there, and you don't know what kind of language Bobby is showing.
No, I have no idea if they disagreed on it or not, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it as well. Hot Dogger wants to know, can we fix the center snap situation? This is the third game where it's caused problems.
Okay, Pittman was asked about that today. Addison Nichols is the snapper. He's been hurt. He has a bad ankle. Pittman said that he wasn't able to do a lot of live stuff, and so it just, you're not out there, you're not fully going through it. Sort of like last week when he had all these defenders that were wearing green jerseys and weren't able to participate in a full speed type practice situation, and they weren't prepared for the game. So maybe that was part of it. He has had that problem before he had the ankle injury, so it's still an issue. And Pittman said he snaps the ball with too much velocity. He called him, what did he call him? He said he was a Nolan Ryan type snapper. And he said he's got to slow the ball down some. So we'll see if they've got to be working on that. We'll see if it does any good.
I think it's funny how he described it like a Nolan Ryan fastball.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great. Randy Allison says, Russell's straight ahead runs are monster-like. They are. He's big.
And people are always ripping Sam Pittman like everything that goes bad is his fault. Like, he has very little to do with what goes on in the game. If you watch him, I mean, he's letting his coordinators do what they do. Yeah. So the only thing you can really blame him for is he hired those guys, and I can't see that anyone would question either one of these coordinators. I mean, question the hiring of them. That's one of the best things he's done. So how about we give this guy some credit where credit is due? And I don't see this coming from anybody. What did he say after the game last week? What did he say on Monday? He kept talking about we got to play Braylon Russell more, and it was his idea to do it. And I think it not only paid off in this game, I think it's going to pay off down the road. Oh, yeah. Because this kid can play, and I do think they need another big back besides Jaquindon Jackson. I think it's going to help him a little bit where he doesn't absorb as much punishment as the season goes on.
Yeah, and take a bit of the load off of his back. I mean, I know he was dealing with cramps in that Oklahoma State game. Didn't seem like he was dealing with too much this Saturday, which was good, but that could be an issue moving forward. And so to have him be that backup, be a guy who can come in and make sure that they get a first down and take some of the weight off of Jaquindon Jackson, I think that only helps you and not hurts you.
That's Sam Pittman. Give him credit where credit is due.
I will definitely give him credit for that one because he said it out of his mouth that they needed to play him more. And I was the one person that was like, yeah, you do. So Top Hog 19 says, a lot of fans expected Bobby to have the offense perfect by game 3. He didn't do that his first year as head coach either. I think by game 6, it'll be rolling. What game do you expect to see the offense really hitting on all 8 cylinders?
I'd say game 8. I'd say game 7. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't have a clue. I mean, this thing has been, there's been no pattern to it. There's been no pattern to what's going on. Your quarterback just has some plays where he looks good. He has some plays where he doesn't look good. The receivers run good routes, then they don't. They're open, then they're not open.
And then they don't catch balls.
The pass blocking is good, and then it's not. I can't say when it would all come together. I said before, it may not completely. They may not ever reach a point by the end of the season where everything is clicking. Maybe it's next year. I don't know. They're going to lose some of these guys next year, so they have to restock their offensive line again. But I don't know. That's a question I can't answer. I'm not even willing to offer a guess.
Yeah, that seems like you would know a lot more than you let on if you knew the answer to that question. I'd be asking you for lottery numbers, Mike, okay?
I don't have a clue. I thought they would be further along than they are
right now.
Yes.
I know you did. You said they would be clicking on all cylinders when we were at the beginning of the season. I think you
did.
said by SEC play they should be clicking on all cylinders.
I thought they would be, and I was wrong.
Razor J asks, will we ever see the Hogs play 4 quarters of good football? This is kind of like a similar question,
Yeah,
Mike.
first of all, what about the season opener? I
that's...
I believe that was 4 quarters of good football. So what he probably should have asked is, when do we play 4 quarters of good football against an SEC opponent?
That's a good question there.
The only way I can answer that is to point out that in this game, I don't feel like they lost a quarter. In other words, you could take a quarter. Okay, second quarter, you got beat in that quarter. They won the first quarter. Even though there was technically no score in that first quarter, Arkansas scored on the first play of the second quarter. They had 2 long drives, came up empty on one of them, but came down and did the same thing again and scored on the second one. And did their job defensively. So they won the first quarter. Second quarter, honestly, except for that touchdown on the first play, was pretty much a draw. Both teams just didn't do much offensively, but they both played well defensively. So let's say the second quarter was a draw. They didn't lose it, it was just a draw. Third quarter, they won the third quarter, definitely won the fourth quarter. So how many times does a team with a fairly evenly matched opponent dominate or win all 4 quarters? It doesn't happen very often. The only way you get a team winning all 4 quarters if it's like Ole Miss going up against nobody. Yeah, they're going to win all 4 quarters.
Well, yeah, like Arkansas did against UAPB.
Yes, exactly. So most of the time, you're going to get some back and forth. But I think the key is how many quarters did they lose in this game? And they didn't lose any of them.
Yeah. I would agree with you there too, Mike. And to me as well, the question is a little like, will we ever see the Hogs play 4 quarters of good football? Well, even if they play 3 quarters of good football.
The first quarter wasn't bad.
But my point is to Razor J out there, why does it matter if they play the first quarter, okay, it's not that great, right? But then they play 3 quarters of amazing football and they win the game.
Yeah.
Are you going to go and say, well, they didn't play 4 quarters of good football,
I
so
think
dang.
what he's probably referring to is the fact that they have a history, this is what they say.
Okay.
Sam Pittman's teams get ahead and then in the second half they give up the game. And again, they don't necessarily, it happened last year, and that is being put on the backs of this team. And as I pointed out, they've already shown that's not necessarily what's happening this year. Just because it happens once doesn't mean that that's going to be the way it is.
Well, they do that with a lot of teams. I mean, a lot of teams go into the season with a lot of expectations from last year's team on their backs, right? Look at Florida State, right? Obviously, they are not last year's team. That is very true right now. But they went into the season with all of those expectations. And even past the first week 1, week 2, people were still going, well, there's all these expectations, there's all this. You can't just say they're a bad football team this year.
Right.
So I think there is always going to be that in college football. The thing that I get kind of annoyed with is you play 3 quarters of great football. Maybe you have 1 quarter you don't play great football. You still win the game. What matters more to fans? Winning the football game.
Sure.
Winning the football game.
Unless you have an agenda. Unless you want the head coach fired. Unless you want the head coach fired, and then this is another one of those things. You don't play 4 quarters of good football.
I can't with these agenda people, Mike. And I just, can we just?
They're not going away.
You can hit the fan transfer portal. How about that we created last week, or when was it? Alabama Hog says, I thought the D-line was going to be the strength of the team, but they don't seem to be able to pressure the QB. After 4 games, they have 2 sacks. Is it the scheme, personnel, or something else?
Well, I mean, it worked. I don't know what he's acting like this game was a part of that. I mean, they had 2 sacks in this game. I don't know if technically it was the D-line that came up with the sacks, but they pressured Auburn's quarterbacks the entire game. There were several quarterback hurries. There were several. I think those picks were the result of Arkansas's pressure getting into the heads of those quarterbacks. And so you got to give them credit for that. I thought their pressure was fine in this game. It really was. It was a gut check game. I thought they came after them. I thought they took both Auburn quarterbacks out of the game at one point. Not for every play, but they had them confused. And I don't know what else you want. I agree up until this game that was a question mark. Why are you not getting sacks? Why is there not enough pressure? In this game, I think they were fine.
I think it's because it's the number of sacks, right? Because you look at a guy like Landon Jackson, who's been very quiet this year versus last year. And so I think people go, well, what's happening there? And
Yeah.
I think one game, yes, you're right. Let's take the Auburn game out. What was going on against UAPB? UAB, a team that against ULM, their offensive line gave up 5 sacks of their QB? And so I wonder what was going on in that game.
Right.
And maybe they've got it figured out. Maybe they do.
I just think it was better. I can understand why you're still frustrated, but that's a positive sign because I wasn't sure it would happen.
It is a positive sign. It is a positive sign. I'm not saying that, Mike. I just think we need more data, right? Because we can't see what if they go and regress against Texas A&M and don't get any pressure again. What's going on there? I think we need to see a positive trend for the defensive line if we're going to feel a little bit better about them moving forward for the rest of the season. Steve Brown says, Coach Hugh Freeze, tell your punk QB thanks for dominating Arkansas.
Well, for a change, it was the other team with a guy providing the bulletin board material. Hank Brown, who won the job of the week earlier when they went into had a home game against New Mexico. Now, he's a redshirt freshman. He didn't play much last year. So he comes in, he wins the job, they win the game, and I guess he got on his phone. I don't know if it was Twitter or Facebook, but I saw the remarks, and he basically said something like, real excited to be in a competitive environment and looking forward to dominating Arkansas. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to blame him for that because he clearly wasn't told by his coaches, don't say stupid things. This is what we discussed last week because some people, the question last week was, why don't you just shut these guys up? Don't have them go to press conferences. You could do that. I'm not in favor of it, but I do acknowledge this. How often, honestly, raise your hand if I'm right, how often does a player in a press conference say something really profound? They're not coaches. They usually don't tell you much.
Hold on. I think some players do. I give a lot of credit to, if you're asking an Arkansas Razorback that says some profound stuff in press conferences, I like Josh Braun. Josh Braun is really open and honest.
Why is it always the offensive linemen that do that?
I don't know.
I mean, I got into a discussion years ago about this because Arkansas had an offensive lineman that we interviewed all the time.
Yeah.
His name was Chris Beckett. He was one of the Becketts.
Yeah.
And he made more sense than half the coaches. And so we loved talking to him.
Yeah.
And I'll ask him, why do you guys, he said, because we're smarter. He said, we have to know all kinds of stuff. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago about these offensive linemen have to know all kinds of different ways that you block. If they line up here, then you do this. There are these little keys about who you block, and they got to know all this stuff. So I will agree with you that offensive linemen are usually pretty good, but the fact of the matter is we probably wouldn't miss not having players if you just had coaches. I would be just fine if they didn't give us players, but they gave us all the assistant coaches. Because this is where you really learn stuff. Yes, the head coach is fine, but I want to talk to position coaches, and we can't do it.
And coordinators.
And coordinators, and that's very frustrating. But if you're going to stick players out there, you got to tell them, look, don't be dumb. Because if you give this other team bulletin board material, that's the last time you'll do anything. And he lost his job probably because of popping off.
Well, and remember what Peyton Thorne said about him in his post-game press conference. What did he say about Hank Brown? What's your advice to him moving forward? I think I'll tell him to stay off his phone.
Okay.
So I think I'll tell him to stay off his phone. There you go.
I didn't see that.
Oh, it was funny. It was a good comment there by Thorne. So, anyways, Armand Abbey says, did you see the rip job Bo Wallace did on Hugh Freeze? Oh, Mike, I'm excited to ask you about this. If I'm recruiting against Freeze for a player, I'm sticking that tweet in the kid's face and saying, look at this.
Yeah, that was a little odd because, as you pointed out, one of the Auburn fans went back a year or two and found a Bo Wallace tweet in which he defended Hugh Freeze. So something must have happened between then and now, because he did start off admitting that Freeze did a lot for him his senior year when he had the shoulder problem, and he kept him going and helped him have a good year. Then he came back and said the reason he kept me going was because he had me jacked up with painkillers and all kinds of other stuff that he was injecting into me. And he said he didn't do it for me, he did it for himself. the way he portrayed this was that over the years, he's just gotten tired of watching Hugh Freeze blame players, always blame players, don't take any of the blame himself. And he said, my son's not playing for him. I won't have him play for the guy because of what he does. Now, the real issue is, does this end up hurting Hugh Freeze? Because right now, I would say no, because most Auburn fans look at Bo Wallace as an Ole Miss guy, and they don't like him, so they were mostly defending their coach. But let's say they don't win an SEC game this year. What happens is you get toward the end of the year and you keep losing these games, and now all of a sudden you're going back, and this is what fans do. They want to reach back and grab onto things. Oh, yeah, look what Bo Wallace said about this bozo. He's got to be fired. I would not want to be Hugh Freeze right now. I hope he has a big buyout.
I kind of see what Wallace is talking about, though, because there were some people sticking up for him and saying, yeah, I don't believe I've heard a press conference of Hugh Freeze's where he's gone and taken the blame and said, you know, it's on me, it's on myself, or any I statements, right? It's always this guy or this guy. It's our running backs, it's our quarterbacks. We need to get, you know, running backs that do this. We need quarterbacks that do this. And he even did that on Saturday.
Yeah, why didn't you go into the portal and get you another quarterback? What were you doing there in the offseason?
Listen, I just think that his seat is definitely getting a little warm there.
It's going to be interesting to follow Mr. Freeze.
The Bionic Pig says the agricultural and mechanical school. Is he talking about Texas A&M?
Yeah, that's technical. That's what they technically are.
I'm sorry. My brain just had to go through that for a second where I was like, wait a second, who is he talking about here? The agricultural and mechanical school hasn't had a QB surpass the 200-yard passing mark in any game this season. Is this the game you put 5 on the defensive line? Kudos to how he wrote A&M there.
Yeah, I think they'll probably do something. I would say that changing the front probably is not what they'll do. But you got a team that passes for 256 yards, or runs for 256 yards a game, and only passes for 161. So they're clearly going to make some changes to try and stop the run without sacrificing pass defense a lot. But you can afford to give up a little bit there. So what they'll do, I don't know. You know, maybe they do less blitzing. Maybe they do more straight up D-line play or whatever. Just try to stop them. It's going to be interesting to see if Arkansas can match up that way. The big shocker in that UAB game was the way they ran on Arkansas.
Yeah.
I didn't think Auburn ran real well on Arkansas, but they had their moments.
Yeah, they limited Jarquez Hunter, so they did a good job. Same with Ollie Gordon with Oklahoma State.
That's the big challenge this week, is to stop the Aggies' running game.
I think you look at how they've stopped top-tier running backs. And that is what you point to, is what were they doing well there? Can you recreate that here? Havoc asks, does the team still get sequestered together the night before at a hotel and coaches do bed checks? The team plays at home, like half the team stayed up all night out running around with no sleep.
So I actually sent a message over there to the athletic department trying to find out, is there even though I knew this was a dumb question, I still sent it to them. And it was along the lines of, do they do something different in terms of bed checks and making sure players stay in the team hotel when they're at home as opposed to on the road? And the answer I got back was, that makes no sense to me. In other words, are you kidding me? What do you think we go, okay, we're at home, we don't have to check anything, just do whatever you want. Here's the thing. If the players were sneaking out, I think the team hotel is somewhere up in Rogers.
It is in Rogers, yeah.
So if you're sneaking out of the team hotel at home, you think somebody's not going to know who you are?
Yeah.
There are fans all over this area that know you, would recognize you, and know what you're doing. So it would get out. Hey, this guy was out running around. They wouldn't get away with it. So no, they don't do it. They've got assistant coaches and grad assistants that patrol those hallways, make sure everybody's in their room at the proper time, and then they go around and listen. I don't know if they actually walk in your room, but if they heard a lot of loud noises coming out of your room, screaming and laughing, and guys in there gambling or something, I think they would probably open the door.
They'd probably go, what's going on
What
in
are
here?
you doing in here? So I think for the most part, you trust that when you get into your team hotel, regardless of where you are, you're going to be responsible. But the there's a lot of, and let me go back to this idea that they play better, because this is another one of these things that they play better than they do. That started last year. Do we really know that's true this year? They've only played one true home game.
Yeah.
And that was against a team. We explained it last week why they probably didn't play very well in that game. Well, let's wait till the season's over to see if they don't play well at home, because that may not be true this year. It hasn't been true of other Pittman teams.
Yeah. I got a question about it on my social media about, hey, do we know why the team plays better on the road than at home? And I said, well, that's a last year thing. We have one game to go off of there. And they asked the same question. Do they do the same thing at home? I said, yeah, they do the same thing they've always done at home. Now, I remember Pittman even saying, and Alyssa brought this up to me, was it last year or maybe the year before? I think it was last year, where he was saying, sometimes we'll go see a movie if the game's later in the day on Saturday and it works with our schedule. We'll go see a movie as a team together, do team bonding. He even said the same thing happened, so we're not sure why that was happening last year either.
It was a last year thing. It wasn't 2022. It wasn't 2021. It wasn't 2000. It was 2023. And suddenly that's turned into a trend, even though they've only played one.
We don't know, because a trend means you have multiple games to go off of. One game is not a trend, folks. That could be an outlier, right? If we're getting statistical here, that's an outlier right now.
I would look at it as, hey, it's good that you play well on the road.
I think that's great too, because look at what Sam Pittman was talking about today, is that they have a lot of road games. And I know the Texas A&M game isn't considered technically a road game. I know the Little Rock game is considered a home game, but they play a lot on the road, right?
They do, away from their home stadium.
Absolutely. WV Hog fan says, Frank Broyles prided himself that he ran a clean program. Eric Dickerson said all teams, including Arkansas, bought players. Is this true, and did Frank and the coaches condone this practice?
Yeah, this is the old Southwest Conference days when SMU got the death penalty. And Eric Dickerson and the other guy, whatever his name was, slips my mind right now, but those two guys were part of a situation where, yes, people got paid, and they were very blatant about it. It's the only time that the NCAA has ever given a team a death penalty. That's a big deal. No matter what else anybody's ever done in terms of buying players and breaking the rules, they've never gotten the death penalty. These guys did. So you're going to take Eric Dickerson's word when he was in the middle of all that, defending them, saying, well, everybody did it. I remember those days, and I went around checking as closely as I could, and here's what I remember about that. There was some evidence that TCU, on a smaller scale, was breaking the rules. Not anything like SMU, but they were doing it. Some people thought Baylor might have been doing it. I checked as much as I could for several years, starting in maybe the late 70s, going into 82, 83, 84, just talking to boosters, trying to find out, oh, does Arkansas cheat? Everybody says everybody cheats. What I got from a lot of these boosters was, look, there's nobody that's totally clean.
Yeah.
Nobody, because you can't control what boosters do. If a booster comes in from out of town to a game, goes out to eat after the game, runs into a player and they've won the game and he's happy, what's to stop him from going out in the parking lot and handing the guy $200, $200 bills,
Nothing.
or whatever?
Nothing.
So what I was always told is, yeah, there are $100 handshakes. I was also told that, for instance, if there's a player who doesn't have any money and he's got an old busted car and he can't afford to fix it, and a booster finds out about it, and let's say he runs an auto repair shop, then he might go, hey, bring your car by here, we'll fix it for you. That might have gone on. But as far as actually buying a car, I was told Arkansas does not do that, Frank. That would be something that you could not get by Frank, so he would know it, so it didn't happen. I'll tell you a quick story. And the guy's name was Jeff Savage. He was a running back out of Texas. He was really good. And he was on a radio show I was doing, and this was back, 2000, whenever, early 2000s. And he said, he was being recruited mainly he said the two schools he was interested in were Arkansas and Texas. And he said, I'll tell you, he said, a lot of those schools cheat a little bit. The only one that cheats almost as much as SMU is Texas, and they're a lot smarter about it. They do it where you can't hardly get caught. He said, I was considering both schools. He said, I came home one day from school, and he said, in my driveway was a brand new Porsche.
Yep.
He said, I walked over there and opened the door, and the registration was there, the bill of sale was, the title was there. It was my car. He said, I took that car, drove it to Fayetteville. What was Texas going to do about it?
They weren't going to do anything.
So they were smart, but if it doesn't work, then you're not very smart. You just wasted your money. So, you know, these are things that you heard, but I never heard anything about Arkansas buying a guy a car, giving somebody a whole lot of money. Hey, we'll give you $400,000 to come to our school. I just don't think Arkansas under Frank Broyles cheated like that. They got nailed on the Ted Herod Trucking Company situation, where Ted Herod was a booster who had a trucking company in Dallas. He had a daughter-in-law that was suing his son for alimony, and the son was saying, look, I don't have that kind of money. They went to court over how much alimony he was going to pay. And the daughter said in court, well, what are you talking about? They're giving Arkansas players all this money. So then the NCAA, because of that court testimony, came in and started looking around.
Right.
What they found was that there were indeed some Dallas area Razorback football players that were employed by Ted Herod. They concluded that they probably came to work, punched their time card, and didn't do much, just sort of stood around and didn't do much. And so as a result, they ended up losing 3 or 4 scholarships out of it. It wasn't anything huge.
Yeah.
The biggest problem with the Ted Herod case was it went on for about 4 years, and Houston Nutt couldn't recruit because of it. Because every time you got into late January, early February, and started trying to sign players, all these players would be going, these coaches are telling me you guys are fixing to go on probation. I can't. And it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, but it hurt Arkansas. But Arkansas has never been hit with any sort of major violations like what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I Was Right says pregame seemed compressed and professional, not collegiate against UAB. It's been going on that way for 35 years, but the denigration of the alma mater to post-game redundancy, what gives, yo? Okay,
here we've got a fan, and there's a lot of them out there who don't like the fact that you had these old traditions that were college-like, and they don't like the NFL, and they don't like the fact that a lot of the stuff that was started in the NFL to jazz up the crowd in pregame, halftime, whatever, has crept into the college game, but it's inevitable. What I was told by people over at the University of Arkansas, they've got Razorback fans that go on the road to places like Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, South Carolina, and these fans come back complaining that the pregame, halftime type in-game atmosphere is much better than it is at Arkansas.
Yeah.
All right, so as a result of that, what they decided a lot of things, but one of the things they decided is, if you're going to play an alma mater when you're trying to hype fans up, really? What are most alma maters? They're very slow and somber, and they kind of make you proud, but they don't make you want to jump up and beat somebody up. It just makes you proud of your school. So they concluded that's a good thing to end the game on.
Yeah.
You feel good about your alma mater as you go home. It reminds you that you went to that school, nothing has changed, they still have that alma mater. So his explanation made a lot of sense to me. I don't have a problem with it. But again, you've just got a culture clash here between fans that want college football to go back to the way it was. They want more bands. They want bands playing more songs, less piped-in music, better halftime shows, longer halftime shows. This thing has been going on in Bud Walton too. A lot of fans don't like the disc jockeys. They would rather have the band over there playing all the music.
Well, yeah, but we've talked about this on this show before, is that the disc jockey that comes in and things like that also are for recruits to see the atmosphere and the fun atmosphere. And wow,
that's
this is
another
so
reason
exciting.
why they do it.
Right. So I'm saying to these people that want it to be the same and all of those things, well, do you like recruits not wanting to come to your program?
Exactly. So you can take that for what it's worth, but I thought the answer made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, the answer does make a lot of sense. I'm surprised you said that. All the people claiming on this show that you like how the old ways. That's very modern of you, Mike.
I'm not old fuddy-duddy all the time.
I know you're not.
I understand the need for change.
I appreciate that in you. It's why I like listening to your opinion, Mike.
I don't like NIL though.
Oh, I know. We know you don't like NIL. We don't need to start you on that. We don't have enough time for that right now. Hog T.E wants to know what happened to the 1990 Arkansas football team. They had good players like Quinn Grovey and Mark Henry returning off back-to-back SWC championships. Some people say it was because Hatfield left. Others said Hatfield left because he anticipated the program was on the decline. What is the truth, Mike?
A very complicated situation, but basically Hatfield left because he felt like Frank Broyles was too meddlesome, was into his program too much, was giving him too much advice. I'm going to give it to you from both standpoints because I know what Hatfield believed and I know what Broyles believed because he talked to me and others about it. Broyles once told me that he thought Ken Hatfield was one of the smartest coaches he'd ever been around, really understood the game, but he tried to do too much. If you'll recall, Frank was a CEO type coach. He believed you hired really good coordinators, then let them hire people to work for them,
Correct.
Offensive line coach, running backs coach or whatever. And he would just sit back and monitor what all of them did. And if you had somebody that wasn't working, you got rid of them. But he believed in hiring people, delegating authority, and then sitting back and watching it, the way this thing works, rather than just trying to go in and fix all of it. And Hatfield was more of a fixer. So Frank had a real issue with the defensive coordinator under Hatfield. And it all came to head in the 1987 Texas game. Arkansas almost had Texas beat. Texas was down to around the 8, 10, 7, 6-yard line, somewhere in the red zone, with enough time to maybe get up to the line of the scrimmage and just call a play and just throw it. I mean, they were disorganized. They were out of timeouts. And all of a sudden, while all that mayhem was going on, there was a timeout, and everybody was like, what happened? They don't have any timeouts. And then it turned out Arkansas called timeout. And it was revealed after the game that Fred Goldsmith, the defensive coordinator, felt like his defense wasn't ready. He needed time to talk to him. Frank went bonkers over that. He went, are you kidding me? Defense is defense. You know what you have to do. They were the ones that were disorganized. You allowed them to win the game. So he went to Hatfield when it was over and said, you got to get rid of this guy. I told you he's no good. Do something. And Hatfield, you're not telling me who my coaches are. So they had one game left. They had to go to Hawaii in the regular season. So they leave. Frank goes over to the chancellor's office and tries to get permission to fire Ken Hatfield for being insubordinate. Chancellor says no. I mean, he's won a lot of games. He doesn't cheat. Just because he won't fire a coach on your staff, that's not the way you manage things. Frank was a pretty practical guy. He went, okay, all right, I understand. He goes back, has his secretary write a mimeograph letter, or I think she typed every copy, but to all of his assistant coaches. And those letters read like this: your head coach obviously has a great deal more faith in you than I do. Let's spend the next year proving him right and me wrong. Frank was taking a shot at these guys. He would say, okay, I didn't get you this year, but you have another year like that and you're all going to be gone. So they sucked it up and really worked hard. Plus, Frank went beyond that. He got that defensive coordinator that he didn't like a head coaching job.
I was
in his office when he was talking to the AD, telling him how great he was. So he got him out of here. Then the offensive coordinator, I think, had enough sense to go, I think I better get out of here. So he left. That allowed Hatfield to hire Jack Crow, which was a huge hire, and they went to back-to-back Cotton Bowls. The way I look at this, Hatfield was a really good coach, but Frank did him a favor. But I can also understand why Hatfield felt like after he had done that, he was a hot property at that point. He says to himself, this is not a good situation. I got to go somewhere where I have more autonomy. So he goes to Clemson, thinking Clemson has just been put on probation for cheating. I'm honest, I won't do that. They'll appreciate me. No. Maybe the administration at Clemson didn't, the fans didn't. So he went, I'm not doing well in this pressure cooker either. Then he goes to Rice. Here's the bottom line on this. Hatfield would have been better off never leaving Air Force. He loved that job. He liked the discipline with the cadets. He liked the people that he worked under, those officers. And he probably, if he had it to do all over again, would have probably stayed at Air Force for his whole career. Really? But I don't know that it was any one person's fault. It was just the way things went.
Yeah, a lot of things meshed together made it
But
the way it
the bottom
happened.
line is, when he left, Frank wasn't prepared, so he hires Jack Crow, broke a rule that Frank always had, that he would never hire anybody that didn't have previous experience. Jack Crow was snake bit from day one. He was going to convert Barry Foster to his tailback, and Barry Foster, within days of Jack Crow taking that job, became the first Razorback to ever come out early. So he lost him. They had a good backup in Juju Harshaw. He just left school. And I won't get into what happened to him, but he left school, and so suddenly Jack Crow doesn't have an offense. And then he goes out and hires a defensive coordinator out of the ACC with a reputation of stopping the run, which is what the SWC was at that time. And that year, about 4 teams converted to a passing game. And so they were just throwing all over Arkansas because they had a coordinator that was good at stopping the run. It was just a mess.
A lot of things happen. I always like how we end the show with a bit of a history lesson there. So that was a great question, Hog Talica. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great questions next Monday when we'll have another show. We'll see you then.